longer, like kind of a dagger thing at one point, and it's like, I don't know, it's probably like 20 layers ish.
Okay. Now, you were playing with we were just at Dustin Smalls for the annual Craven Tong Fest in it's Regina, Saskatchewan, just north of Regina, in town of Craven. Not really in town, middle of nowhere, actually, really thinking about it. Like, you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere when you're there. You look outside and it's like, I don't know, I think we're back in Kansas, Dorothy. It's the feeling I got there, but it's a Saskatchewan farm. It was a cool place. Dustin definitely takes care of the people that come to visit. He's a very good host. Very cool property, very cool shop. And while we were there, you brought a piece of cable to play with.
Yeah,
You've done some cable welding before in the past?
Yeah, I have.
In the propane forge, right?
Yeah.
Now the trick to that is, you were saying, is you throw it in the propane forge and you let it soak, because you gotta make sure that you've got that heat down to the core, the same temperature that you require for forge welding. You need that at the core as well as on the exterior, and if you have too hot of a temperature, you're going to cook the outer shell before you even bring the interior portion to the required temperature for forge welding. Now with a coal forge, what we found is that was a lot more difficult to achieve versus a propane forge.
Yeah.
Partially, I would say, in due to the fact that we were using a shared forge, though.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself the benefit of the doubt there. I think big time, anyways. Like I truly believe that you were on the right route. You had it fairly well welded.
The weld was taking at first, but then I freaking roasted that thing. So. Well,
and like I said, I don't think it was you necessarily that roasted it. It might have actually been me cranking that forge a little bit too much, or maybe it was one of the other chaps that was there that was cranking the forge. What do we have, 5 pieces of iron in the forge at once or something there? I don't know.
At one point, probably, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little bit hectic in there. So I mean, it is what it is. We found a failure with what we were doing, and we learned from it. We learned that, hey, when you're using a coal forge for doing Damascus welding, cable welding, that kind of thing, you've got to be pretty careful.
Yeah, for sure.
So now, that being said, with the forge welding, your forge is naturally aspirated?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of what kind of PSI you're running on your forge to achieve a weld? Sorry.
Not offhand, no.
Okay.
Needs to be hotter, crank it up, and then if the color looks right, then it's good.
Yeah, right. Do you watch for sparks coming out of your forge when you're doing propane welding, or?
Not really, no. What I've kind of heard is, once your piece of metal, it looks almost like
wet.
Almost wet, almost like butter that's just starting to melt. That's what it looks like.
It's that glossy look to it. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to see that in a propane forge as well, right? Yeah. You can actually watch your piece and see that happen to it, whereas in the coal forge, you've got it buried in coal, so you're kind of basing it off the piece that you can see and the color of what you can see.
And then there's all sorts of other irons in there too, then you don't want to be digging around in there too much, like trying to look at your own piece, because then the other ones are falling out of there. And
then you got somebody mad at you that you messed up their leaf on them. My leaf burnt! Oh well, it happens, right?
Yeah.
So what if I burnt my leaf? I don't care.
The next one looked good, so learn from that too.
It was mediocre at best. But so once you got once you had achieved a forge weld with that cable, the next process would have been to continue to draw it out, or
draw it out into a piece of flat bar, and then continue to shape that into a blade.
Now, as you're flattening that out into its own flat bar, do you still see the texture of the cable in the metal?
In the scale, you can kind of see it.
Yeah,
a little bit, like in the same way that Damascus would scale off differently because the different types of metal oxidize at different rates, I guess.
Yeah, right.
So you can kind of see the pattern in the scale.
Well, the oxidation layer is going to carry different molecules in it, giving it a different color pattern, much like the steel itself does. What is exhumed from the steel in the heat is going to show it in scale, so that completely makes sense. It's a very interesting concept. And then once you're done forge welding the cable billet flat and you form your blade from it, do you do acid etch on it then at that point to bring out the...
Once it's all polished up real good so the pattern comes through well, like hand sand till, I don't know, depending how patient I feel, up to like 600 or 800 grit. And then, acid etch it in ferric chloride. And then
do you use a straight ferric chloride solution? Do you dilute it?
It's diluted with just distilled water, I think.
1-to-4 ratio.
1-to-3 or 1-to-4, yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that.
I heard an interesting concept on the Knife Talk podcast. I can't remember. I want to say it was Mareko Mamasi that mentioned that he uses a 1-to-10 ratio for his ferric chloride, and it still works very well.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Like a slower etch is definitely better.
Okay.
Like if you just do like straight ferric chloride, it tends to almost be more blurry, I guess.
Right. Okay.
And then let it soak in the acid for a while, and you'll clean off all the gray gunk or whatever on your blade. Clean it all off good and everything, and then you can soak it again. And the farther your acid is diluted, I guess the more you'll have to do that, but you'll end up with a much better etch.
Okay.
And it also depends on how well you polish your blade beforehand too. So.
Have you ever tried doing a coffee etch?
That I've never tried, no. I've tried hot vinegar.
Hot vinegar?
Yeah.
How did that work out?
For me, it didn't work as well as the ferric, but I've seen guys who have had good results with that too. So
yeah, I've heard different things: vinegar, mustard. You can use stuff like that to get a different patina if you want on your metal.
I've done that with kitchen knives. Just like soak a paper towel basically in hot vinegar, and then just like wrap it around, and then it just gives it kind of like a good forced patina on the blade to kind of protect it from rust. And it looks kind of cool. So.
You obviously oil your high carbon steel.
Yeah, just
kind of oil, just cooking oil.
I just use gun oil.
Gun oil.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if it's gonna work to keep your guns nice and clean, then why wouldn't it work for blades, right?
I don't know. Is it food safe gun oil?
That I don't know. Although those kitchen knives that I used were never oiled at all, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. Or like.
But like that sword that I made.
Yeah.
When I bring it places, everybody's touching it and there's fingerprints all over it. So, or when I get home, I'll wipe it all down and put some gun oil on there again.
Okay.
Just to protect it from all the oil from people's hands.
material from people's hands is actually fairly acidic and can actually mess up the metal.
Yeah.
Have you had that happen to anything of yours, or?
Yeah, if it's just a blade or something just sitting in the shop for a while, I haven't cleaned up or whatever, then sometimes it develops a little bit of surface rust.
Yeah.
Or on that sword too, on the cross guard of it, you can see there was some rust forming there too as well.
Okay. Have you ever worked on any sort of art pieces before, or are you mainly a blades guy?
I guess art is subjective, so it depends if you'd consider it art, but yeah, there's like, whenever I have little cut-offs of all sorts of stuff, I'll try to make something out of them just so I'm not throwing a ton of stuff in the scrap bin. So like little sections of like round bar and stuff like that, I'll make them into skeleton fingers, and like I made like the forearm and the hand of a skeleton.
That's pretty rad.
Kind of life size, and
That's super
just out
cool.
of little end cuts of round bar. I don't know. I like hands, I guess. Maybe all sorts of different things, like a fist punching through a piece of sheet metal that's all splintered and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's rad, man. Cool. Very cool. Let's go back to your forge. You run a propane forge, naturally aspirated. Is it single burner, dual burner?
It's actually a 3-burner.
Triple burner.
Yeah.
It's big, eh?
From NC Tool Company.
Professionally made. Nice.
Yeah.
So how big is that exactly? Length to it, like interior dimension, essentially.
Interior, probably, I don't know, 14 or 16 inches, maybe.
Okay. Does it have a couple doors on it, or?
Yeah, there's a door on the side, and each of the ends is just probably a 3-inch by 3-inch hole in the opening.
Wow. That's lasted you for how long now?
Probably bought that like 4 or 5 years ago.
Still runs great.
Still runs good. With all the flux and whatever in there, the lining in the bottom part of it's pretty destroyed already, so I'll have to replace that soon.
Funny, I was at a friend's place the other day and has noticed his forge had a very open, dirty bottom. Essentially looked like the entire bottom of the forge had been eaten out by flux, and he was still using it like no worries, didn't care. And I asked him about this. It still works. All right, you're happy. That's all that matters. So I don't know. It's something about having, like, my forge is made of fire brick.
Yeah.
So the bottom of the forge is nice and flat. So my pieces that I put in there sit on the forge bed nice and flat. They don't have any sort of dips that they sit into or anything. And to me, something about that is I don't know, I feel like it's important that my forge doesn't have a dip in it for some reason. I feel like you're not getting proper heat transfer when you put your piece into that dip versus on the brick itself and absorbing the heat from the brick. But do you have any input on that thought process as to whether the flat surface makes any difference to the dip? Now that you've gone from having a flat surface to having a dip in your forge now.
Yeah, that I don't know. I guess that would make sense, yeah.
Do you still feel like it works just as well with the dip?
It would be better with a flat surface, just for the sake of having things sitting properly in there rather than trying to balance them on the uneven surface on the bottom, right?
Okay, yeah, there's that for sure.
And I should have relined that forge like a while ago already.
Well,
Laziness.
When you go to reline the forge, what's the relining process? Is it just make a mix of refractory and paste it in there?
Actually, well, the nice thing about buying like a professionally made forge. They actually sell kits for each of their forges that they sell. So it costs like probably $100, but
Okay.
you can buy a whole kit with everything you need to reline it. You basically just take the ends off and slide the old brick and insulation out, and then you can slide the whole all the new stuff in and put the end metal back on, screw it back on.
Wow, that's pretty slick. They run a little forge like what I've got, a little homemade forge made with fire bricks, and got to replace the fire bricks. I had to start cutting the thing apart with my ankle grinder and put in new bricks, put it back together, and had to tack weld it back together. So it's I mean, I didn't have to tack weld it back together, I guess, but I like it to be solid. I don't want a loose piece.
Yeah.
I've seen some pretty janky setups. Not gonna mention any names about somebody I know with a brick forge that just lays their burner on top of bricks. It's kind of I don't think he's got it set up like that anymore. I'm pretty sure he's changed it up. But first time I went over to his place and I saw that, I was like, wow, dude, yikes. And he said the same thing. He's like, yeah, yikes, I know. Yeah, so, but yeah, I'm pretty sure he's upgraded his forge to a ribbon burner with a solid structure to it now, so. And a ribbon burner is something that I'm very interested in going to. Have you had any thoughts on going to a ribbon burner ever? Or?
I don't know. I don't really have any experience with using them, so. But wouldn't hurt to test out some other people's forges, find a good option that I like, maybe.
Yeah, it's maybe a real good idea for us as a guild is to set up an event one day where we invite everybody to bring their forges, and we can test out different forges and see what everybody likes better. It'd be a good idea to do something like that. It's a good apple.
Better because it was free.
Well, not really. I technically paid $90-something for it, but I mean, it included a place for me to rest my head and take a shower, so. Now with the guild going on that we've got, we've had the first hammer in that we had. That was a really cool event. We had a tong making demo go on. We had a hammer making demo go on. We had, Matt Jenkins from Cloverdale did the tongs. Dustin from Small Bar Smithy, he came in and did hammer demo. I kind of assisted with that with where I was at and health-wise. My neck was still buggered up pretty good, so there's only so much I could do. And so we made a really nice hammer, and then there was a couple guys, it was like Friesen and Max. They had a nice Damascus billet that they hammered out, and then Bill Harder, I believe, as well. He had a Damascus billet that he brought in, and
then me and Max and Grayson all did some synchronized hammering.
That was cool. Watching the three of you guys tink to tink 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 to tink tink tink,
that was lots of fun.
Yeah. That was a bit of a highlight of the event, watching you guys hammer out the billets in Damascus. It was really cool. I highly suggest that that's something that a lot of guilds look into doing if they can, is get some guys that know how to do Damascus billets and just show guys it's as simple as this. Just, soak it in the heat, bring it out, tap with some flux, and then once you've got it set, you start going to town. And it's essentially, I don't want to say it's as simple as that, because it's not, but it is. It's a simple process, but it's a difficult process. You expect many failures in your trials and tribulations. I'm not not too sure what else we could really touch on at this point here. Where did you get the idea for your sword?
Well, I had another friend who big into Viking stuff, and he really wanted me to make a sword, and yeah, everybody's always bugging me, make a sword, because you're a blacksmith, obviously you can make a sword.
Of course. But a blacksmith can't make a sword, right?
And then I just figured out, frick it, I'm gonna go and get some steel and I'm gonna make a sword. So it's just kind of a winter project. Took me a good amount of time to do everything, but when I finally made a sword, number 2 is on its way.
Ooh!
That one will take me some time too, I'm sure, but
Do you already have a design in mind for that?
it's forged out already. Yeah, it's forged out already.
Cool.
Just lots of grinding and polishing to do yet.
Gonna leak some information on it there? Give us some spoilers here. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
It was basically kind of just a hand and a half sword, I guess. So it's a bit longer than this one that I made. Blades, I think, sitting at 37 inches. The blade. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Straightening that sucker. It's all made from brand new leaf springs.
Brand new leaf springs.
Yeah, I bought, like, there's a spring shop in the city.
Yep.
And
North End.
North End Spring.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Guy that works there is a full-time blacksmith.
Really?
It's my neighbor.
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool.